Tonight's agenda should be very brief. You're going to hear from a few board members, again, some of our cabinet members, really highlighting some of our district achievements, talking about how we got here, so how we've arrived at the ask of issue 16 in November, taking a look at the fact that this is not a new need, guys. This is something that has been a need that predates my time here. I walked into a school building that was in dire need of attention. And I think any of the staff members that are here can talk to you a little bit after this presentation about what some of those needs are. We also have an amazing group of young ladies here from our basketball team who can talk to you about the daily challenges of my most favorite groups of students. What this district is facing if we don't eventually arrive at new facilities, and ultimately the good news, what we envision for North Ridgeville, and what we are most excited to share with each of you. I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent David Britt to talk to you a little bit about where we are and what our achievements look like. Mr. Britt.
Thank you. So a bit of my background, I have been here forever. So this is my 24th or 25th year in the district. I have been a teacher, I have been an assistant principal, a principal, the curriculum director, and now I'm in this role. When I started here a million years ago, we were a district of about 2,700 students. We are now a district of about 4,900 students. So I have the great fortune of knowing where we have come from and where we are ultimately as a district. And it's a great thing to see, and it's part of what keeps me here. So I'm going to do about 3 slides with you, and then I'm going to hand it off to somebody else who I don't remember who that is. And then I'll come back up to talk about some other great things that are happening in the district. But I think one of the first things we need to touch on is the fact that we offer a top-notch education with opportunities for kids wrapped around our mission and vision statement of providing opportunities for students to design their preferred future. And that's important to us. That means if you want to go to college, we're going to get you to college. If you want to trade, we're going to get you to the trade. If the military is your thing, we're going to do whatever we can to get you through that place. And we do all of that by being in the top 20% of lowest per pupil spending in the entire state of Ohio. So when you look at this just real quickly, state on average per pupil expenditures, $11,306. We're doing all these opportunities at about $9,700 a year for students. So about $1,600 per year under what the state is saying. Is the average. So when you look at that, you wonder, well, just what are we doing? If you had an opportunity, report cards came out last week. State issues report cards every September based on work that happened in the previous year. They have a habit of changing how that looks. So this year they have gone to a 5-star system, 5 being the best. North Ridgeville City Schools this year rated a 4.5 stars out of 5. What's important to know about this star system is the goal that you are shooting for is 3 stars. So if you have 3 stars, you are doing exactly what you are supposed to be doing as a district. So being 4.5 stars, the state ranks North Ridgeville as exceeding state standards. And when we dive down a little further into some of this stuff, we've got the progress piece of that. And what progress means is, if I score 3 stars in progress, it means that my students have grown by a year, having sat in my classroom. So they look at testing data, they look at results, and if I do everything that I am supposed to do, my students are going to score a 3. So when you see a 5 here for progress, what that is saying is that we as a district are growing our students more than what would be expected of a typical school in a typical classroom. And the other one we're extremely proud of is our gap closing, and what gap closing looks at our subgroups of students. Are our subgroups of students, whether it be economically disadvantaged, whether it would be a minority student, whether it be a student with disabilities, maybe it's a student who has English as a second language, are we moving them closer and closer to where a typical peer would be? And again, in that area, we've got the 5 stars showing that North Ridgeville significantly exceeds state standards in closing educational gaps. So lots of good things here, regardless of the metric that we're using. And again, we're doing that on less than what the state typically does on average. But more importantly than that, we talk about those opportunities. And this is where I think, we're really providing an opportunity in the bargain for our students. So Ranger High Tech Academy opened 7 years ago. This is its 7th year. It is still the only public STEAM school in Lorain County. Prior to that, it was the only public STEM school in Lorain County. There are less than 70 fully accredited STEM schools in the entire state of Ohio, and we have one of them here. So Ranger High Tech Academy started with grades 4 through 7, grew at both ends. Last year we had our first graduating class from there. Every single one of the students who graduated last year graduated with a diploma and at least one associate's degree, in some cases more than that. When we look at the academics, if you had asked me 11 years ago, how many AP courses do you offer, my answer would have been 4. My answer is now 19. So if we have a student who wants to make their way, we can certainly provide that opportunity. We have students at Ivy League schools each of the last couple of years. So we've got that opportunity. We've got the opportunity in our middle school program. If you would like to and you're motivated to, you could actually leave the middle school, the academic center, with enough credits to be a sophomore upon arriving here. We start full grade acceleration in math as young as 2nd or 3rd grade. Athletics programs have expanded, so if you've not had an opportunity to get out and see all of our sports teams, you need to. I hear our middle school playing volleyball down here, actually, as we speak. We've added teams the last couple of years, gymnastics, swimming, and then our arts and music program is also something we're very proud of. So as we look at those programs, whether that's the piano courses we have added at the high school for credit or something else, we've really provided those opportunities to our students. And that's really critical for us because unlike most districts across the state are contracting, quite honestly. They are not growing the way that we are. So to be able to offer all of these things to our students during a time that we're showing great growth, I think is just a tribute to everything that the people sitting in this room have worked to accomplish. So with that, I'm going to hand you off for just a minute while I get a drink and move on.
Thank you, Mr. Pritt. So I don't know if you all heard this, but Mr. Pritt said it. We're growing. How many of you have heard me say that before? It is remarkable to me to come to a district where I left a district that was shrinking by hundreds of students on an annual basis. I came here and we're growing hundreds of students on an annual basis. Our average growth in my 6 years here has been about 150 students per year, and that has ebbed and flowed somewhat. Obviously, during COVID, you can see we had a little bit of a shift, though you can see those students have come back, and then some. So we continue to trend up, and that is an awesome problem to have. However, brings with it some challenges. And so we take a look at our buildings and what the capacity is in each of our buildings and how that really attributes to some of the educational opportunities that Mr. Pritt was speaking about and how we're ultimately limited in some cases. So currently Liberty Elementary, which many of you know, is pretty overcrowded. The good news for us this year is our 1st grade class is our smaller class, okay? So we're talking about students who may or may not have started on time, again, during that COVID time. That class is actually 80 students smaller than our next class in size. So our current 1st grade class is 290 something. So we are talking about, as we continue to see Liberty become more and more crowded, we are definitely trying to come up with solutions in the meantime to address what we know is ultimately a long-term problem. So right now we have about 600 students at Liberty Elementary School. Keep in mind 25 of those students are currently at Ranger High Tech Academy, and we know next year that will be much larger. Right now every single space at Liberty Elementary is in use. Our closets have been converted to small group learning spaces, whether it's a one-on-one reading tutor. In some cases, there's more than a one-on-one situation. Small groups of kids in closets, common areas. So at Liberty Elementary, if you're not familiar, there's no gymnasium and no cafeteria. It's actually one single space sunken in the middle of a building. And so previously to this year, the pods on the outside had no barrier of sound between what was happening in that gymnasium or cafeteria, depending on the time of day. And so our classroom teachers, much like we're working with tonight, were dealing with lots of different sounds that potentially could have been harmful and truthfully are harmful to students trying to learn to read, to learn phonetics, think about sounds and the importance of learning. And so this year, we were able to secure a grant through Mr. Junker's office to put doors on those pods in the classrooms. Is it a long-term fix? No, but it is a short-term solution to at least help with some learning. It is a long-term or a short-term solution to dealing with some of the noise, but it certainly doesn't fix the issue of space. I'm going to come back to the Academic Center. Right now you're at North Ridgeville High School. There's about 60 of you sitting in this room. On any given period of the day, girls, what do you think, about 150 kids in here? Roughly, lunch period? 150 kids are smashed in here for lunch each and every day. Again, there's about 60, I think 60 some that RSVP'd. So you can get a sense of what this room feels like when it's at full capacity for any lunch period or any other time during the day where students need to be if they don't have a scheduled class. This building was built for 900 students. You can see we're almost at 1,500. We did add the modular units last year, which is 8 classrooms. That takes about a 200 student burden off of the main building. This too is a place where we've converted utility closets. You'll see in some photos, and I think the videos and photos that Mr. Print will share with you shortly will tell you the story of this school. We have old restrooms that have been converted into psychologist's office, for example. And again, we are using every bit of space that we can here. Our middle school athletics actually do all of their competition in this building. The new building, the Academic Center we're going to come back to, is where our varsity sports take place. So we have middle school students transversing over here, and our high school students going to the Academic Center for practices and competitions after school, which is certainly not ideal. But the Academic Center, gratefully, was built and opened back in 1617. There are currently just under 1,900 students with a capacity of 2,200. We are in good shape at the Academic Center. We have room to grow. In fact, if you remember our proposal for an elementary school, it did include a 3rd grade, and that was some forethinking of if we need to continue to help and if we continue to grow, we have space to put students at a different building should we need to. So we were thinking long-term in terms of space, but in the meantime, and probably in the foreseeable future, we have some room to grow at the Academic Center, and we feel very comfortable knowing that at the moment. I'm going to turn it over to Board Member Kelly McCarthy to talk a little bit about how we ultimately got here.
I ask myself that almost every day, how in the world did I get here? I mean, how did we get here? So I've been on the Board of Education. Thank you all who have ever voted for me. Thank you those who didn't. I appreciate that just as much. I've been on Board of Education since 2011. May of 2011, I replaced a retiring board member. Since 2012, we've had a facilities committee that have been working on a master plan for the district. That committee obviously has changed over the years. Not everybody is still on it that was on it. Not everybody that was on it is still on. Yeah, you understand what that means. So our plan was, back then, 2 phases. First phase, the middle school, the dreaded middle school, and Wilcox Elementary. Now, Wilcox Elementary was beloved by many, 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 many people, and they were sad to see it go to the wayside. But the middle school, how many of you remember the middle school? Lord have mercy, the middle school, right? It flooded, it was dangerous, and back then, in 2012, it was the middle school that allowed us to be eligible for emergency funding through the Ohio Facilities Commission. So we put a bond issue, phase 2 of that was to replace the crowded high school and the elementary school. Phase 2 that was thought of in 2012. Let's replace this middle school and this elementary school, create this amazing academic center that we have now, and replace the crowded high school and elementary school. So in 2013, we had an amazing committee working with Citizens for Better Schools and our staff and our community, and everybody came together and said, yes, we want to do this, and they passed the bond issue, and that was incredible. So we built the 3 through 8 building, and It's been a learning curve for our staff. They had to get used to a new format, new way of teaching, right? New structure, lots of movable space, community space. We're not sitting in rows facing a chalkboard anymore with a lecture in the front. Kids are getting hands-on education. So that's amazing. 2019-20 and, well, 2019, 2021, 2022, we decided it's time to implement phase 2 and then address the deficiencies that we have in our elementary school, Liberty, which I was telling you how beloved Wilcox was. Liberty is beloved to me. Liberty opened its doors in 1976, I believe it was, and I was up in the first kindergarten class to go to Liberty Elementary in the afternoon. It was amazing. I thought it was huge. I thought walking down from pod A to pod D was a mile. I kind of still feel that way now. But anyway, both of those attempts, as you know, were defeated. 2023, we're here now. So we're requesting the funds to tweak the master plan. So we're not building a high school and an elementary school. We're tweaking that master plan now. We're coming back to you and saying, we need a high school. We desperately, desperately need a high school. That's what we're coming back to you to tell you. So again, this is just like the pretty version of what I was just talking about. We passed an operational levy with that amazing committee. Some of them are in the room today. We thank you. In 2012, construction bond passed in 2013. We failed in 2019. Passed the substitute levy, combining all those four emergency levies into one substitute so we could gain revenue on the new homes built in the city. 22, we had an operational and a construction that failed. 23 in May, 23 votes. Our levy failed by 23 votes. That's still hard to say. But here we are now, 2023, and we're hopeful 6.26 mils. And we did a survey after our last issue failed. And the community told us that they will support a high school. The community told us that they might support a high school and an elementary school again, but that millage was too high. They definitely told us that we're not going to support just an elementary school, right? Because that just wasn't in the plans there. So since the community felt that the May ballot was too costly, the same survey showed that 70% of the voters would support a plan just to address our high school, and that's where we're at today. We're at a plan today, 6.26 mils, in case anyone's recording me, 6.26 mils for the construction of a new high school. Right? Is that my last slide?
Yes.
So who gets us now? Oh, is that
And Mr. Young.
the dream team? All right,
So
dream
while
team.
they're making their way up here, this is a real live view of students traversing our hallways.
So I can find you.
I'm hiding so people can see the screen, yes. So you can see, this is during a class change. Sorry, I'm trying to get out of the way here so people can see this. This is during a class change. This happens multiple times throughout the day in all of these hallways. Certainly less than ideal. Mr. Pritt can talk more about how it impacts educational and curriculum time. One of the things I think that gets overlooked is how it impacts safety and security in the building. We had a real life example of this within the first week of school. We had a fire alarm go off while we have an entire school pep rally in the high school gymnasium. So almost 1,500 kids in a high school gymnasium, the fire alarm goes off. We don't know what it's for, we have to evacuate the building. And the halls look much like you just saw in the video there, which certainly it's an issue when you're trying to get out in a timely fashion, and you can't do that because you've got corridors that are too small, you've got limited entry and exit ways, and so many students trying to get to those points. Well, if you want to talk about the,
No, I think you're spot on with that in particular. You know, what you don't think about is the fact that when you look at these videos, you see a lot of kids with backpacks. And quite honestly, they have backpacks because there's no way to get to a locker. In fact, I'm not sure there's enough lockers for the number of students that we actually have in the building at this particular point in time. So again, going with that overcrowding piece and just the challenges that a building presents, you know, that doesn't necessarily get into some of the other challenges that you would see, you know, with facilities like restrooms and things. This is a building built for 900, so restrooms are sized for 900 students. And now you're at 1,500. I mean, imagine going to an event at Brown Stadium and suddenly they're closing down half of the restrooms. And that's about what you have. Or anytime you go to Blossom would be the other example that I would give. You know what it's like when there's more people than there are restrooms. So put this in perspective. This hallway is the one that you came through down this way. This one is the one literally that you see right here. So if you make a quick left and then a right, that will take you down to some of the art rooms. It'll take you to the history hallway. It will also take you out to the mobile units, which, as Mrs. Casario said, were added last year. There are 8 of them. And a set of restrooms. When I say restrooms, keep in mind there are 200 kids out there at any given time. There are 4 total toilets out there. And it's just one of the challenges that you end up dealing with when you're as overcrowded as we are. Some still photos. We've got some science lab stuff. I'm going to let Mr. Yunker talk about that, at least as far as the facilities go, and then I'm going to talk about how that impacts us programmatically. I think before we get into that, though, we're going to show you just another quick video, and I'm actually going to attempt to pause it here. Morning arrival. If you're not familiar, students come in, they kind of hang out in the lobby there until things get started. So this would be a typical classroom here in the building. This is actually, if I'm looking at it, looks like a history classroom to me, possibly. So you're looking at 26, 27, 28 students, and because of the size of students, let's be honest, high schoolers are bigger than little kids, much more crowded than what you would typically find, you know, in our elementary schools. As our class sizes continue to grow due to lack of space, you know, this is a challenge that we're facing throughout. But this is the one that I want to stop at for just a moment. So this is arts. So we have 3 art rooms in the building. 2 of them have no natural light. They are interior rooms. And what you're going to find is that you can go through most of this building throughout a day and end up in rooms with no natural light. But where it's particularly troublesome is when you get into your art rooms, because we know that, you know, pictures, painting, things like that change, you know, when you move from a fluorescent light into more natural lights. We also have issues when you don't have windows with being able to use paints or oil paints and things like that, and how do you ventilate them. Similar challenges when you're working through ceramics, which I know is a popular class for our students. So again, the spaces themselves, we have survived through when we've expanded offerings, but what we've not been able to do is to take those to the level that we would like to get them to. This is a history class, I happen to know that one for sure. And when we start talking about, I think it was Kelly who said, you know, we moved from that model of students sitting in rows, listening to teacher talk to something else. This is the attempt to make that happen. And when the class isn't big enough, those pieces that many of us do every day in our regular life of collaboration, working together and things like that become more problematic. So Mr. Yunker, we're going to talk about science spaces, I believe, in this video. So
yeah. Mr. Pritt mentioned with the art rooms, there's no natural light coming in. Same with the science room. So one, you've got a very institutionalized looking classroom, which is certainly not inviting. You've got a building that was built in the late 60s, so certainly didn't accommodate for any type of growth that we're seeing now. The educational components of these buildings, or these classrooms. When you talk about the science classrooms, we had an issue last year where there was a smell of natural gas coming from one of the spaces. So we shut the room down, we called the gas company, we get them out here and found that there was upwards of 60 gas leaks throughout the various science labs that are losing pressure because of lines that are original to the building, that are bored underground, that are going through walls. We had to shut down every science lab in this building. Those students were then transitioned to use the labs at the academic center. This past summer we were able to make Band-Aid fixes and get several of them operational so our students can learn in the building in which they attend. But the problems are greater than just we're replacing a valve here or there. We've got spaces that are simply failing right now because of the age of the building.
And along that line, you know, when you think of a building this size, 1,400 students, all of them at some point in time are required to have chemistry, for instance, before they graduate. We have 2 rooms that have a fume hood. And those are just added within the last 6 or 7 years. So as Mr. Decker talked about, the solution for last year was to move students. You're talking about a 45-minute class period, 5 minutes over, 5 minutes back, and suddenly you're trying to do things in a 30-minute class period as far as labs go. There are 1 million unfilled STEM jobs every single year. And these are the facilities that our students are using to compete with students from not only around the country but around the world for those jobs. So I think it's important to keep that perspective as we work through all of that. We really weren't making it up. Picture on the left there is actually our psychologist's office. That is a former restroom and a former closet. It's had several ideations, and now we actually have a couple of sites who have worked out of it. Picture here as we look is actually a picture of the mobile units themselves, and I think we may have a video that goes along with that one. It just shows what those spaces look like. What do you know? It's like magic. So around the corner to the left, and then the right and to the left, 8 classrooms. And what you see here is what's typical in Northeast Ohio for, I don't know, it seems like 8 months of the year. It's either raining or snowing or something. So we have anywhere up to 8 classes happening out there at any given time. Students, when they arrive, if they're not on time, actually have to be buzzed into those mobile units from somebody sitting here in the office. So if I'm in the mobile units, my parent dropped something off, I didn't bring with me this morning, they're going to be buzzed into the building, to the office, down to the office, back to the mobile, and buzzed back into the building. So it seems like that's a lot, and it is. I mean, their class period changes are 4 or 5 minutes, and simple solutions sometimes people say, well, just put more time between your classes. But what we need to recognize is that every extra minute we add between classes really works out to about 3 hours of instructional time a year, somewhere 2.5, 3 hours of instructional time. And that is the one thing that we can't make more of. So
we looked at those hallways being crowded, the same as here, right? I mean, you've got that many kids going out to mobile classrooms through our little vestibule and then outside in uncovered elements. So really it is a product of our situation right now.
I'm going to let you and Mr. Baca take this one. Inside stuff is my domain, outside stuff is all yours. Sure.
So I haven't been here quite as long as Mr. Pritt, but I've been a board member for 16 years. And to say we've grown is an understatement. In the community, we hear, why aren't you remodeling the current high school? Why aren't you adding to the current high school? Why aren't you building up? All these whys aren't you using this space? So currently, this is our high school. There's infrastructure issues that are going to cost upwards of $1 million to address between the roofing issue and then the steel structure within some of these facades. And the foundation's not designed to go up. Foundations are designed for what is built at the time. So to try to go up at this point, the foundation and the structure of this building is not an option for us. The cost, I mean, anybody that lives in an older home, you know the costs go up as the home ages. This building's no different. It's just a lot more expensive to maintain. Temperature in this room has gone up since we've all come in here. Picture the 150 kids in here, how warm this is. Those type of things that are built for this building, the cost to do heating and air conditioning upgrades, technology upgrades, ultimately would probably cost more to renovate this building. And if we could go to the next slide, one more. Bottom line, if we added to this building, it would be 2 football fields. That would be the equivalent of what it would take to accommodate the needs of the school building, correct?
Yep, that's exactly, and you'll see it here in a couple slides. I think Mr. Baca hit it on the head. Those repair numbers that he talked about are just that. Those are repairs to the existing structures that you've seen. Those are repairs to roofs that are now approaching 30 years old. He talked about thermal comfort. The windows in the 1967 portion of the building are original to the building when it was built. When we have thermal studies done, it's like you're watching, a movie and you see all this infrared coming in because you've got all this air that's infiltrating through the building. So that number that Mr. Baca talked about would only go up if you're talking about a complete restoration of this building.
And when you think about it, we keep calling them modular units. Folks, they're trailers. Bottom line, that's what they are. We spruced them up, we threw some siding on them, but at the end of the day, they're not conducive to education. And they only took care of the need of 200 students. And going in and out of those buildings, picture Cleveland winters, some of the rainstorms we've had lately. Our kids are going in and out of that building to go to trailers that are accommodating a need that we currently have. Security. Security is a big deal in 2023. We've seen the stories. We want to be able to provide a secure building for our children. And can you imagine walking up and down these halls in an event in this building? So there's so many reasons why remodeling this building makes absolutely no sense. And then if you throw in, really, I mean, who would want to go to work and go, hey, they just remodeled the bathroom for you, here's your office for the next school year. That's what we're doing to our staff. We're sticking our staff in these places. You mentioned Blossom. I don't think any of the girls in the corner had any idea what you were talking about, but we all do. We all remember the old Brown Stadium, those bathroom facilities. We're doing that to our students and our staff. Staff spaces for preparing their lesson plans daily. We've taken those over. Every square inch of this building that we could utilize, we've done it. And honestly, we just don't have the space anymore. The need hasn't changed. The other part of the need that we probably should address is in 19, we were able to build a new high school and a new elementary school for $137 million. Just the high school is $143 million. The costs just keep going up year after year after year. And our need's not going to change, but those costs are going to keep changing if we don't address this issue in November. It's not an option for us. Our students deserve better, our staff deserves better, and quite frankly, our community deserves better. So 272,000 square foot is what we're asking for. An attached auditorium, maintenance garage. Do I have anybody from maintenance and busing in here tonight? Picture going to work if you're a mechanic and saying, hey, I'm gonna fix this bus, and you back the bus in, and a third of the bus is outside because the garage isn't big enough for the buses. That's what our mechanics deal with every day. The building's falling apart, our maintenance department working in substandard facilities to maintain these facilities. It's just, there's so many reasons that this needs just keeps coming and it's coming. And we really need it. 23 votes is heartbreaking, especially when I had 3 people that are near and dear to me say, hey, I just forgot. How many people do you know? 23 votes. The needs now, we need to get everybody excited. You need to call everybody. There's absentee voting, there's early voting. There's absolutely no reason we shouldn't have people showing up at the polls in support of what we got going on. The other thing is we're building for is future enrollment. 198 kids this school year will add with our enrollment. And that number should be finalized in October. It's most likely going to go up from there. That, our average is 150 students.
I think this graphic is telling, and this is what Mr. Baca was talking about earlier. The yellow square is the existing building that we're in. The blue square is what's needed for the enrollment of the district. When you look at that, I really think it's amazing how undersized this building is for our current enrollment.
Ms. McCarthy?
Back to you.
Back. Okay, so what is the future without facilities at North Ridgeville City Schools? Well, it sucks, I'll tell you that. Yeah, I mean, that's just the plain and simple of it, right? So let's be real with each other. These are the things that are negatively gonna affect the outcomes for our students, okay? Both academically and co-curricularly. So this fall, we've already been reducing. We've already had some of these impacts implemented. We began an enrollment cap for full-day kindergarten, and we increased the cost for kindergarten and preschool. Now we know, right, that early education is the foundation of success for our kids, and here we are in a district where we so desperately want to have full-day kindergarten for all of our families. And this year, we started capping enrollment. That's not going to change, that's only going to get worse. So we reduced the high school graduation requirements due to class size. So in the past, in order to graduate for North Ridgeville City Schools, we needed 22 credits, thank you. Now we need 20 to graduate. By reducing that number that the students need to graduate, Now, mind you, I see some of the students going, what? So there's still requirements that are in those 20 credit hours. So if you don't have those and you still have 21 credit hours, you can't graduate. You have to meet the requirements. Okay, but that being said, reducing the number of credit hours students have to take helps us reduce the number of classes, right, that we have to offer because we're overcrowded because we don't have the space to offer those classes. We have increased class sizes. Our classes are jam-packed. Our teachers can't walk through the aisles because of backpacks and things in the way. And they're on top of each other. We've had to increase charges for group facility uses. We've increased our busing radius to 2 miles for 3 through 8 students. Previously, it was 1 through 5. That's a huge hardship for those families that are just on the cusp or outside that 2-mile radius. A huge hardship on them. We understand that, but it's a cost-saving measure for the district, and one that we have to do in order to keep our academics solid, right? So we're gonna cut the extracurriculars and the co-curricular type things before we cut our academics. But, that being said, we've also eliminated several courses at the high school, including AP classes. Now, we've done that with those classes that have 5, 4, nine kids. Because we don't have the space, we can't run a full classroom for only 9 kids. That makes sense, right? And it sucks. It truly sucks. I'm sorry that that's my word for this afternoon.
It's appropriate.
Okay, thanks.
So those are the cuts we've already made in '23. And we've been asked why. Well, bottom line, all these improvements, the trailers, they cost money. The trailers on the high school, initial cost was just over $1 million, and then it was another couple $100,000 for roofing. For a temporary solution, well, that money's got to come from somewhere, and the only place that money comes from is the general fund. And we're gonna have to continue to take a look at those things. The doors, lucky enough we were getting through grant money, but we don't have that opportunity every time we have to make a decision to address the needs in these buildings. So if we fail in November, we know we have expenses in the near future to revamp existing facilities, to add additional trailers, which means additional cuts. We could be looking at, and this one's heartbreaking, implement hybrid and remote engagements. We were there, we've done this. We know the downside to that to our students. The students that don't do well in these models, the students that really struggle, the students that we did everything we could to get back up to speed after doing this. To have to go to this when everybody in the staff and the administration and the Board of Education has worked so hard to offer AP classes, to offer online learning where it makes sense, Mandarin Chinese and things, to afford our students every opportunity to succeed when they leave these buildings, to start going backwards from there because of facilities. I mean, it's insane. And this, if you would talk to any of these teachers in the back of the room before you leave, this one's probably the most concerning to them because nobody wants to go back here. But we're running out of space.
I can't see it. What is it?
Implement hybrid, remote engagements with high school
the same one
classes
you
due to
talked about.
space, yes. All-day kindergarten. There is research to support the benefits to all-day kindergarten, and our goal is to get to a point where all-day kindergarten is afforded to every one of our parents in the district at no cost to them. But we can't do that if we're spending monies elsewhere. We can't do that if we're throwing good money after bad, because that's what we're doing every time we remodel one of these buildings in this high school. Again, the trailers. I hate this word. They're not modular units, they're trailers. The STEAM program. You heard, we're the only one in Lorraine County and one of only a handful in the state of Ohio. Again, another opportunity that exists for our students so that when they leave these buildings, they're competitive. These are opportunities that this community's blessed us with our finances, but we're coming back with another need, another ask. So we can continue to do these things, so that these students can be competitive when they leave, so that each individual student can receive the education that makes sense to them. And we're getting to the point when we start making these cuts, our students are gonna feel it. And that's, at the end of the day, is absolutely heartbreaking. And again, 23 votes. 23 votes, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Let's not mention the fact that 23 votes met the entire need we had. need to pass this high school, but that doesn't change the fact that Liberty's still an issue for us, that we still have issues in our elementary schools. But the community spoke and said, look, if you only can do one, this is the one we want to see done first. And it's 600 kids, 500 kids over capacity. That's what it looks like, guys. If we don't pass, this is what we're looking at. Additional reductions to transportation, that could affect K through 2. And again, what do you mean, transportation? How does that, because the money's got to come from somewhere. And right now, the money's coming from the general fund because we don't have any additional revenue to address these needs. Nobody wants this. Nobody on this Board of Education, nobody that was associated with the schools, the administration team, absolutely nobody wants to go here.
So we're going to turn it over to Mr. Pacini now. He's going to talk numbers for you and break down the costs of this bond issue.
Thank you, Mrs. McCarthy. So this is the overall composition of the project being proposed. It's 6.26 mils bond issue, 143 million total project cost. 84% of that being the new high school. So that's mainly, the bulk of the project. 10% being an auditorium that would be part of the high school. 5% gymnasium, and 1% demolition of the existing buildings for the total project composition there. Could you go back to that last slide for a minute? So this is a different way of looking at it. When you take $100,000, the $100,000 example per market value, home value, looking at that monthly, so it would be $219 annually on $100,000 market value. Monthly, it's less than $20 on that $100,000, $18.25 per month. So breaking that out in these categories that make up the project, you're looking at $15.33 for the high school on a monthly basis, $1.80 for the auditorium, 91 cents for the gymnasium piece, and 18 cents for the demo part. And that's, again, looking at it on a monthly basis based on a $100,000 value. Next slide, please. So if you want to figure out exactly what that is going to cost you, you can go to the Lorain County Auditor's website to get your market total value, and that's where you start. It's not your Zillow's estimate or what you could possibly sell your, house for. It's very different. It's the market total value in the county auditor's world, what he's basing the tax bill on. And where you go from there, you multiply by the property tax rate in Ohio. For everybody, that's 35%. And then the millage rate, the 0.00626, because it's 6.26 mills being levied. And then you get the 219 for if it was a $100,000 market value, for example. And that's actually what you will see as part of the ballot language when you go to vote. The ballot language actually presents it that way. $100,000 per, per $219 annually per $100,000 market value. So I think that's all I have on that slide.
Okay, and just to even simplify that further, if you go to our website, there's a calculator. So if you go to the auditor's website, get your total market value, you can throw it in that calculator and it'll tell you exactly what it will cost you on an annual basis. So why is all this important? We are here to really construct a vision for North Ridgeville, and we are here to put in place a path for every single student here to be successful. And it's not all about bricks and mortar. It's about all the programs and the amazing things that you heard that we're doing here despite not having space, despite not having an influx of cash, despite the fact that we've added almost 1,200 students in the last 10 years, and we don't get a dime additional for that. So we have done all of these things within what I would believe to be some very fiscally responsible programmatic choices, in addition to really making the best use of space that we possibly can. This is our current campus. This gives you an idea of a design concept of what a new building could look like. Of course, that's not final, because it wouldn't be final without your input, without the input of our staff. What do we want a new facility to look like here in North Ridgeville? What do we need in a new building in North Ridgeville? What are the things we've learned from other cities and other communities that have constructed new buildings? And I think we have a lot of experience among our team to know what are the things we should be looking to do and how do we gather input. Envisioning meetings with staff, meetings with students. What do students want in a new space? Not that everybody can have everything that they want, but ultimately, how can we meet the needs of the majority of our population? This is our current campus. You can't see it, but this little tiny thing right here is our current building. This bright orange would be the conceptual space of where a new building would go. So the great news about this is that we can keep students right where they are. We don't have to spend millions of dollars on swing space. They can remain here in this building safely through construction. I had the fortunate experience of living through half of the building being demolished while the remainder stayed intact, and it was a whole lot of fun, but it can be done. And so I know that the space that's provided here would give us a great option to keep kids safe while constructing a future facility. Also keeping in mind, our current facility is a one-story building. It is about a half of the size of this. That would be a three-story building. So again, that gives you an idea of the size necessary to educate our current population and our future population. And I, for one, am extremely excited about the future of North Ridgeville. So again, we have lots to look forward to, so many different things we continue to offer our students, a supportive and amazing Board of Education that really wants what's best for the students of North Ridgeville, and what I believe to be a staff that is second to none, who goes above and beyond in some pretty deplorable situations as it pertains to space, and we are grateful for all of the work that they do every day, and an amazing staff. So we are going to ask that those of you who are here, if you would like to take a tour, we have some pretty amazing tour guides that will give you a sense of what our students, you won't get the space congestion, but you will be able to see some of the facilities that students are working with on a day-to-day basis. And the remainder of us will mingle around and answer any questions that you might have.